A Holler FM podcast. Hey, Vanessa.
Hey, Chanel.
We are back. We are here. It is Sippin' with my Sista. We had a little bit of a hiatus, but it is so good to be in front of the mic and talking with you.
Yes, it is. I miss having this podcast. So real quick to our listeners who've probably been wondering what's been happening. No, we did not ghost. We did not flake. So we had a family emergency. Our dad had surgery, so we were taking care of him, making sure he was okay. So we had to scrap back to school night, which was for September. Yeah. So we did Ferris Bueller, but the other three we had to scrap. So hopefully we can go back to school, in the coming months. We'll see.
Or we can figure something out.
Yeah. So we decided to start off with Halloween because it is October.
And we are in the fall. At least in California, it's definitely feeling more fall. Who knows how it is over in Arizona?
Well, in Arizona, it's been actually pretty nice. It's been like in the mid-90s. There's been a cool breeze. Why are you laughing?
Girl, what did you say? It's been really nice. Yeah, it's been in the mid-90s.
Yeah, it's been like in the mid-90s, maybe even low 90s. There's been a nice cool breeze, so...
Oh, Jesus. No, that okay. That's, now we know how fall is in Phoenix. It's in the mid-90s with a cool breeze.
Well, I think by October, November, you'll start to see it get really cool, like 80s, 70s. Yeah. It hasn't been too bad. It does not feel like an oven. So
that is good. I am glad it doesn't. And I'm laughing at you, but I will freely admit that over here in the Bay Area, we definitely had some really hot days in September, which is kind of, to me, that Indian summer, but we had some 90s. And now that we're in October, it's been nice because it's feeling more fall. Like we're having those kind of like brisk, like 50, 55 mornings where we have jackets on.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. So I think both Felix and the kids and Robert and I, we're all feeling like it's finally fall. We're going to go to the pumpkin patch. And as Vanessa said, we're going to do the horror films.
Yes, yes.
So before we go into that, we about to say that at the same time. Jinx.
Yo, me a soda.
I also realized that if I jinxed you, I didn't know. I was like, wait, if I jinx Vanessa, how do I do the rest of the show?
Yeah.
Okay, take it away, Vanessa. Go.
Oh, but before we get into the movie, Chanel, what are you sipping on?
Okay, so since it's fall, I wanted to move into more fall kind of drinks, which normally are red wines. As Vanessa will say, I'm definitely not a red wine drinker, but I did think about a good fall drink. Do you know what it is?
What is it?
Did you hear that?
I heard that.
Golden State Cider.
Oh.
Right? It is fresh pressed West Coast apples with champagne yeast. And it is gluten-free, vegan-friendly, no added sugars, and no concentrates.
That actually sounds pretty good.
Right? So I'm excited. I felt like the cider would be a nice fall drink without having to go into the red wine territory just yet.
Right.
So what are you sipping on?
So I am sipping on Della Rosa.
Ooh.
Yes. From the Target. I actually really do enjoy Stella Rosas because I feel like it's a nice wine to drink, if you're at home wanting to relax, or if you have company over and you just want something that's light, crisp. I just think it's a really good drinking wine,
What kind of wine is it?
It's a red wine, but it's sparkling.
Ooh, so is it... Okay, it's a sparkling red wine?
Yeah. And it's sweet, but not too sweet. It's not like port sweet. It just has a hint of sweetness. Because I know there's some people, they drink red wine, it's like, oh, it tastes quote-unquote bitter.
Yeah.
But with Stella Rosa, it's like, it goes down very smooth. This is actually one of those wines where if you don't know your limit, you might find yourself dancing on the tabletop because it goes down so smooth.
Well, I'm glad that we both know our limit because we done been through it.
Praise the Lord.
So we good. Let's do a cheers. Cheers, Vanessa.
Cheers.
That was good. How are you doing?
Girl, I'm just here trying to survive.
Hey.
Yeah, everybody knows I'm in nursing school. This session has been crazy busy. Everybody, including myself, is stressed out, overwhelmed. I will admit I had a nervous breakdown. So I'm like in the coping stage. I'm just trying to survive. But there's been a few people that I know of who have also been like, you can just look at their face and they've just been overwhelmed. And there's been some people that have just like broken down. This session has been pretty crazy.
No, I know when we've talked and just kind of like you said with our dad's health stuff and then with your school schedule, you've definitely shared that it's been really, really hard session this time around. And that everybody is feeling it, and it's coming out, the stress, in different ways.
I appreciate the friends I have made in nursing school and the friends I have in Sacramento to help keep me sane, because you just need a lot of support, a lot. How are you doing?
Girl, I'm right there with you in terms of surviving. I think with, like with dad and then the kids and starting school and then with work and just, trying to constantly stay afloat at work and manage everything. It's been really exhausting and, just stressful. So I will say what is really nice about us starting up the podcast is it's nice to watch a movie and the kids are asleep. Praise the Lord. Thank you, Jesus. So that we just have some time to talk. Like, it's just a nice break from kids, work, family. It's just like a nice break.
Yeah, I hear you.
All right, girl. Let's get into the movie. Okay, wait. So, as Vanessa said, we had to scrap back to school, which is a bummer. But this movie, I think, actually takes a little bit from back to school and eases us into the horror films. And it is, drum roll please, The Craft.
Came out in 1996.
Neve Campbell. Is it Fairuza Balk?
Yes.
Because Lord knows I was like, I'm going to mess up her name. Robin Tunney and Rachel True. I remember when this movie came out and, like you said, in 96, because there was so much controversy. Do you remember that?
Yeah, there was.
It was like everybody was so freaked out and, oh my God, this is this movie about witches and they're teenagers. And I just remember, we wanted to go see it and Mom and Dad wouldn't let us go see it.
I don't remember that. I do remember how there was controversy surrounding it being about witchcraft and people are worried that it was promoting devil worshiping.
Yes. And so for those of you guys that might be on the little younger side, or for those who didn't know about the craft, this is basically a movie. It's about a young girl who's in high school. She moves to this new school. She meets 3 other young women who happen to be witches. They become friends and start practicing witchcraft, and together they end up having powers and start making, spells and basically lashing out on some of their enemies, dealing with some of their scars and their own trauma, and they become very powerful. And basically, at least the three out of the 4 witches become drunk on power, and bad things start to happen.
Right. That's pretty much it in a nutshell.
There we go. If you guys haven't watched The Craft, it's a great movie to watch right now because we're in that Halloween season. Vanessa, what did you think?
Okay. So I remember when this movie came out, I remember watching it. And as a preteen, teenager, however you want to say it, I loved this movie. Like, it actually made me want to study the history of witchcraft, Wiccan, metaphysics, even the goth culture. And I loved, I don't want to mess up the actress's name, so I'm just going to go with her character's name, Nancy. I loved her makeup. I loved that dark eyeliner, the blood red lips. I loved it. I so wanted to do that when I was a preteen teenager. I did. I seriously wanted that. I seriously wanted to go to the mall, dating myself. I wanted to go to the mall, go to Hot Topics, and buy the black petticoats, the black boots, I just loved that style. But of course, we grew up with Deacon and Sista Fletcher, and they were not trying to have that.
Praise them. That is 100% true. I'm going to tell y'all a little quick story because I remember this like it was yesterday when Vanessa and I went to the store. We were kids. We went to the store with our mom. We went to what was it? Was it Target?
Probably Toys R Us.
Or some different name, though. I forgot what it was called at the time. And we bought a Ouija board. And we were so excited, and we came home, and we went in the bathroom because you had to go somewhere really dark. And I remember we were like, okay, we were trying to figure out how to get the spirits to talk through us. Girl, I remember when Dad, I think Mom must have told Dad or something, and he opened the door hella quick. It was open, just yanked that door open. And I've never seen in my life Dad move so fast when he wasn't angry at us. And he packed that shit up real quick and then drove back there and returned it. And I was like, as a kid, because, at that point I hadn't seen The Exorcist. So I remember being I don't even understand. I just wanted to talk to the spirits. Girl.
Right. I mean, because I remember the commercial for the Ouija board. I remember the commercial. And it was does Sam like me? Oh, am I going to get asked to the prom? It was basic questions like that. But now that we know the history of the Ouija board, it's usually opening up some doorways to some evil spirits.
Girl, after I watched The Exorcist, I promise you, I was praise God for Dad. And I swear to God, if any of my kids bring that home, I'm doing the same exact thing. Because I was nope, not on my watch. But I just remember his reaction. So yes, Vanessa is very much right that our parents would not, under any circumstances, have, gone along with that.
Right.
I also
but...
Oh, go ahead. You finish.
No, I was going to say, as a preteen teenager, I loved this movie. I loved Nancy's aesthetics. Like I said, it made me want to research more about, the witchcraft, Wiccan, metaphysics, all of that.
See, this is so funny. So y'all can get a snapshot into how Vanessa and I were as kids. It's because so I don't remember us being able to watch it in theaters. Like, I feel like mom and dad were like, no, you guys can't go see that movie. But you're right that I do remember watching it in 96. And when I watched it, so I thought that Nancy was crazy. And I remember, and this is as a kid, I was not interested in her look at all. So I felt like everybody else had really cool looking outfits, and they had the chokers. Remember the chokers?
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Yes.
So I remember I ended up getting a choker from that Delia's catalog, and I was like so excited. So I remember really liking the style of like Nev Campbell's character and Rachel True's character. You know what? I'll try to be consistent since you're using characters' names. And what's the girl's name at the other one? What is her?
Sarah?
Sarah. I liked their aesthetic a lot more. And so I was like, yeah, I want to kind of wear the plaid short Catholic girls, skirts. And I want to, have the buttoned up shirts tied at my waist with it open with another shirt underneath it. Because at that point, I was trying to show my midriff off. That ain't happening now. No one needs to see my midriff. But, I remember really liking the aesthetic, but I was never into all that witchcraft. I was like, I ain't invoking nothing in me, praise God. I don't need that in my life. So this movie just reinforced to me why I would not want to be into any of that stuff at all.
Right.
So here's the question, I think, because it sounds like, we're talking about the style, the aesthetic. I think one of the key questions that I always ask you, does the movie hold up to when when you watched it, you loved it. It made you want to research all this stuff and do all these things. I don't even think I knew that BTW, by the way. I did not know you were into the dark, although now I can see it, but at the time I didn't. But does it hold up now?
Real quick, because like I said, Deacon and Sister Fletcher, we're not going to have that. Can you imagine if I came home with dark eyeliner and red lipstick, wearing all black, talking about I'm a Wiccan now, to Deacon and Sister Fletcher?
Nope.
Who attended Genesis Missionary Baptist Church under the pastorship of Dr. Robert Porter?
Nope.
Lord, no.
No.
But yeah, I really was into it. So, but going to your question, does it hold up now? Okay, I have to say, as an adult, for me, it does not hold up. It doesn't. And it pains me to say that because I just remember loving this movie as a preteen teenager. So as an adult, watching the movie, I was seriously like, okay, the beginning is good, the middle's okay, and in the end, I was just like, I had a feeling the filmmaker didn't know how to end the movie.
Huh. Say more. So it seems like, okay, so what do you feel like held up in the beginning? What maybe started to unravel in the middle? And then what was, the worst part about the ending?
Okay, so in the beginning, I think what was really good is how they started developing the characters, and they kind of had some backstories for all of them. So you kind of saw, the whole teen anxiety going on, which is what we expect in young adult movies. So I thought they did a good job of kind of having a backstory for the characters. The middle part, I can't really pinpoint when it starts to unravel. I would probably have to point to the car scene in which Nancy is turning every light green. And then the last light, Sarah's is not going to turn green, and Nancy just goes through it. And the girls in the back, Rochelle and Bonnie, are laughing their heads off. I think that point is when it starts to unravel, because I liked how in the beginning it kind of made this sisterhood, the rejects created their own coven, their own support system. And then just to kind of see it unravel in that manner, where Nancy is I don't care, everybody can go to hell. And then Sarah is kind of remaining I don't want to use the term virginal, but it's like she's like the pure one and the other three are evil. I feel like that's when it starts to unravel. And then for the end, it just kind of felt really rushed. Like Rochelle and Bonnie, they see their images in the mirror and they're like, oh no, it's coming back to us. And they just run out. And then Nancy and Sarah have this weird fight where it just kind of feels anticlimactic. Yeah. And then at the very end, when Rochelle and Bonnie, they come back to see Sarah and they're like, do you still have your powers? And then they're like, oh, she probably doesn't have powers. And then Sarah like shows off her powers. I don't know. It just kind of felt a little, did we really need that? Because now it kind of makes Sarah seem like she's the petty one.
Yeah. Like, I think my response is also my thoughts on the movie. So I'll kind of do both because I think I have definitely what you share as a spark for me. So I think I would say off the top, which you probably already did, is like, like the special effects, all of that stuff is dated. So you already come into it. Like the movie, like you said, it's very dated. It's very 1996, like the chokers, the little tiny hair clips, which I also had.
Yes, I do remember you had, I think you had a ton of hair clips. Actually, no, I think you had the tiny butterfly clips.
I did.
That's what you have, the tiny butterfly clips. In every color, y'all.
I have the tiny butterfly clips, but I also have the little tiny mini clips that I think it's either Bonnie or Sarah has. I had a million clips. I had the choker. I mean, we could talk about some fashion choices because I was doing the most. So I think, you get transported into that into the 90s when you watch the movie.
Right.
Which I think I was okay with. That didn't pull me out or anything. And I think the whole thing, the beginning with that weird homeless guy, I remember thinking, okay, this is weird. Does this guy serve any purpose? And I still don't feel like he did. So that was one thing. Agree, yeah, where I was like, okay, like if he's supposed to be prophetic, it did not work. And so that threw me off because it was creepy, but it just had no resolution. So that was one thing I didn't like. I will say that the kind of whole thing of like Sarah coming in and meeting these weird girls, that all vibe with me because I think I would have had the same reaction. And I was with you too, where I liked the camaraderie between them and how they were all kind of outcast. And I'm completely with you where I feel like it's like both Bonnie and Rochelle, like their characters completely flip. So it makes sense that Nancy would be drunk off of power because Nancy, she's unstable and her home life isn't stable. And so you get the sense that she's kind of always like, I want everything to be okay. I want, but she also is like the leader. So it makes sense that she would be drunk off power. But I would say that both Bonnie and Rochelle seem to have more of a conscience. So their flip to being completely narcissistic and not caring about anyone else felt a little like over the top for me.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, wait, what?
Yeah. It seemed too abrupt.
Yeah, it wasn't set up. Like, it was kind of like you felt bad for Bonnie's character for most of the movie with all the scarring. Mm-hmm. And then, now she's like a total narcissistic, like I'm hitting on every other guy. And the same thing with Rochelle, particularly as a Black woman watching it, BTW. I mean, Rochelle's hair was bomb, by the way. Like, let's just be real.
Yes, it was.
Because I was like, I remember watching that and I was like, can I get Rochelle's hair? But like, again, it was like both characters. Like, I felt like she genuinely felt bad for Laura's character when the hair was being pulled out. So yes, their change was way too abrupt, in my opinion. And I would also say that the ending gets really weird because you're like, oh yeah, so instead of it being about like women coming together and being powerful and kicking ass, it's like you've turned it into a weird ass trope where, oh look, we have the white, almost blonde, virginal character who is the light of the group, and she's now attacking, the three evil ones. And so I just felt like, this just sucks. Like, the whole thing that's great about witches is that they're supposed to be, in my mind, a little bit on the like female empowerment, feminist kind of mind frame of like, we're all in this together. And I think the movie does a terrible job of communicating that. And it actually pits women against each other, which is super uncomfortable.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like the ending would have been stronger if the three of them were fighting against an entity that was possessing Nancy. I would have liked to see that, as opposed to the women fighting against each other.
Exactly. And it feels like, oh, okay. And so Rochelle and Bonnie just see the impacts of it and they just run off. And to me, actually, they get off, pretty easy comparatively, even though they like, quote unquote, misuse their powers. Like, they definitely got off easier than Nancy did. So I was like, and the whole end scene, you're right, where it's like, oh, I guess, Bonnie's all covered up. So I'm assuming her scarring came back. Like, you just don't know. So you're kind of like, oh, I guess her scarring came back. And I guess they are really just superficial people that didn't really care, even though the movie sets you up to think that you really care about their issues.
Right.
So, yeah, I think the movie just lacks, it's kind of like it lacks in that plot development piece and really thinking through, well, this is what we've set up. How do we address it?
Yeah, that's why I feel like maybe they didn't know how to end the film.
The other interesting thing is that there's only 2 or 3 male characters, not including the homeless man and her father. And even those guys, I mean, I remember thinking, oh, with the Chris character, he none of them have any real motivation. They don't even really drive the plot forward other than like, oh, Chris, he's showing Robin's power. Like, that's what he's really doing.
Yeah, I have to say the supporting characters are very one-dimensional.
Exactly.
Like, the girl whose hair was falling out, Laura. Yeah, her hair, like she's supposed to be, obviously the snobby, racist blonde. But I just felt as if it just seemed so one-dimensional. There wasn't any layers. And then at the party, when she's talking to Rochelle, and she's like, hey, Rochelle, how's it going? I'm just like, what caused the change? Because I'm sorry, I just feel like if you're a snobby, racist woman, your hair falling out is not going to change your personality. And like, I could see if Rochelle like did something, like provided her like encouraging words or gave her some type of support, then I can kind of see that personality shift. But there was nothing, so I was just kind of like, it just feels so out of the blue.
Yeah, and I think I was agreeing.
Like the filmmaker, yeah.
I was just going to say, I'm agreeing with you on that, and I was just going to cut in because I think part of it, too, is that I'm okay with the characters being one-dimensional, but there's no motivation. There's no reason, really, why Laura dislikes her other than, I guess, her being black, which, to be kind of honest, in 1996, that even feels a little weird. That just like race alone is the only reason why I don't like you. And then there's no point where you connect or where Laura can connect that Rochelle is the one causing her hair loss. So it's like, again, why be nice to you? I mean, you're still invited to the cool kids party. It's not like she's become a social outcast. So
exactly.
There's no motivation for the one-dimensional supporting characters, even with Chris's character, where it's like, he lied about, sleeping with Sarah. Although I guess he didn't lie about Nancy. Sounds like they actually hooked up.
Mm-hmm.
There's no motivation for him other than being a jerk. So when he ends up getting this love spell and, falling for her and he can't do anything but think about her, on the flip side of that, you don't really feel anything because you're like, oh, I guess, he feels like this way about her. Oh, he's dead now. Nancy killed him. Like, there's no empathy that you can have because you're still trying to think about, like, what's the real motivation for these characters? How are they driving forward the plot?
Yeah, I would agree with that. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, definitely doesn't hold up, I think, in the way that I would, even as a, well, we don't discuss age, but even as a teen or preteen when I watched it, it definitely didn't, it wasn't a movie that I was super like into, but it was definitely a movie that I remember being like, ooh, I have a reaction. Like, I was scared at some points, and it was a movie that creeped me out. And now when I watched it, I remember being like, oh, I mean, I guess this is kind of creepy. No. And I just remember like, this is just more, like, it felt like a little bit sloppy writing, and it could have been better with more thought and intention.
Yeah, I agree. To me, it doesn't really hold up as an adult watching it. It's definitely geared for preteens, teenagers.
Well, on that note, I mean, I think this is a good way to transition into our other topic about other top movies in 1996. So,
yes,
what I will say is that the top horror film in 96 was, can you guess what it is?
Oh, 96. Oh, it was probably Scream.
It was. Which was interesting because we were just talking about whether we do Scream or The Craft.
Mm-hmm.
So, couple of fun facts about The Craft. Neve Campbell and Skeet Ulrich, who plays Chris, are in The Craft, and they're in Scream.
Oh, yeah, you're right.
Right?
And I feel like Scream was probably Neve Campbell's big breakthrough as far as feature films. I know she was in Party of Five.
That's right.
But I feel like, feature film-wise, I think Scream was her big breakthrough.
It was, and actually the thing is that Drew Barrymore was supposed to be the lead, but she couldn't do it, and Neve Campbell was nervous about doing another horror film after The Craft, but she took it, and you're right, it ended up being her big breakthrough. One of the things I was going to say about Scream, so part of why we didn't do Scream was because both of us felt like we watched it a bunch of times.
Yeah.
So if you had to line up Scream to The Craft, what do you think?
Oh, Scream would win hands down.
Yeah. I mean, I think that all of the plot holes and like just the kind of like sloppy writing that you see in The Craft, I think Wes Craven, when he's, looking at Scream, what he does is, to me, he plugs all of those holes, right? So,
right.
Neve Campbell's character isn't the quote unquote virginal Cindy, and he's making fun of the own tropes that he in part created with Nightmare on Elm Street.
Right.
And the killers that he has, they all have a clear motivation that you figure out at the end of it. Even, so you know what I mean? Like, it's even like the supporting characters are far more fleshed out than the characters in The Craft.
Right. And the ending of Scream was very satisfying too. It kind of like wrapped everything up and everything made sense. Whereas I feel like with The Craft, like I said, to me, it just seemed like the filmmakers didn't know how to end the movie.
Exactly. And one of the things, and it's funny because I told Vanessa this, that I haven't watched Scream in like 20 years. But one of the things that I remember, because I watched it a bunch of times in that era, I loved the character. It was Jamie Kennedy. And he was the guy that was at like Blockbuster Video or whatever. And he basically would narrate the horror film. And it was like the person that when you're watching a horror film and you're like, oh my God, no, this is going to happen. And he was that person. And I think that's what made Scream so much fun, was that you were like, oh yeah, there's that guy who like works at the movie store and watches all this stuff and knows exactly what's going to happen. And I think The Craft, in comparison to Scream, almost takes itself way too seriously. But here is a couple other notes. One, did you know that a remake is happening of The Craft?
I'm not surprised. As I was watching it, I was like, I bet you this movie is going to be remade. I guarantee it.
It is, and they've already picked the 4 women who are going to be the new witches, it's the same makeup of like 3 white women, 1 black girl. None of them are known. They're all kind of unknowns. But the other funny thing, so it's like the remake is happening. It's not clear if the old cast members are going to be a part of it. But apparently one of the salacious details is that Rochelle's character, so Rachel True, she has brought up a number of times that she's actually been left out of the cast reunions. So when they go to those conventions, everybody else gets booked, but she doesn't.
And that, again, does not surprise me.
What do you think about that?
It's sad because, I mean, she is part of the core group, but watching the movie, she's also the forgettable character, you know. Whereas I feel as if the other girls, you know, you see Nancy's home life, you see Bonnie's, you know, getting the burns taken off of her body. You definitely know about Sarah's backstory, about her mother dying during childbirth.
Right.
But with Rochelle, you don't really get a backstory. You know, the only thing you really get is the typical racist white girl motif. That's about it. But there's nothing really, like, she doesn't really stand out.
No, I think that's it. And I think apparently she said it goes all the way back to the MTV Movie Awards, where the 3 women, so Farouza, I'm probably butchering her name, Lord forgive me, Nev and Robin all presented, but she was watching them in the crowd.
Oh, that's so sad.
Right? And so she's saying it's racism, and because she's of color, that is why she's been left out.
And that could be it. I mean, it's sad to say, and I'm not saying everybody in the Gothic community is prejudiced, but I do feel as if there is that undertone of racism in the goth community, where it's seen as only white people who can be pale can be goth. Like, nobody else can be goth. So I kind of feel like that also is playing into it. It's like the 3 white girls, I mean, they can help represent the goth culture, but Rachel True, who is black, she can't be goth because she can't be pale. Or, you know, black people aren't gothic. I mean, I think it's really sad because to me, I mean, you would think a culture that is underrepresented, who are deemed social misfits or outcasts, would be embracing of all people, of all cultures and colors.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to be real, like, keeping it on 100, like, I never wanted to be goth. I had no desire to do that. I was, you know, I remember in high school, I remember the people with the trench coats and all of that. And I was cool with them. And I felt like I was friends with them and I was nice to them. But I never, ever had a desire to don that attire myself. But yeah, I do think that there's definitely a way that when you're of color, there are just certain things that are not for you. And it's sad and it's funny because the whole movie, it's like, oh, she has this racist white woman and that's what she's fighting against in the movie. But it's very clear that, you know, whether it was intentional or not, that also plays out in these cast reunions and these conventions at the MTV Movie Awards. And girl, you know, I probably watched the MTV Movie Awards and I hate to say it, I do not remember even thinking about why isn't she up there.
Right.
But I did like her. I remember liking the scene that there was somebody of color as one of the witches, and that made me feel really good.
Yeah, no, I appreciated that too. I just found it sad that her backstory was not well developed. You know, I wish that there was more to it than just the standard she's experiencing racism.
Yeah, definitely agree. And I think the one other tidbit I'd say that you probably already know, apparently they were practicing real Wiccan rituals throughout the whole film, to the point where they actually changed the name of the deity that Nancy invokes, so that, you know, girls wouldn't be out in these forests invoking like real people and real things into them.
Right. Yeah, I think the actress who plays Nancy, I believe she's a practicing Wiccan.
Yes. And I remember I was like, thank you, Lord, that I never was into that Wiccan life. Because when I heard that, I was like, nah, swerve. I'm good. Not about that life. But yeah, she is a Wiccan, and I'm definitely not. And I was like, I'm just glad I never said any of that stuff. But, you know, because I'm not interested in that.
Can I just say something about Rachel True?
Yeah.
I mean this in a good way, I think she's a vampire. Homegirl does not age. Have you seen her recently?
Yes. When I was watching the movie and I was like, oh, I want to take some couple notes. And I remember looking her up, and she was 30 when she did the movie. Mm-hmm. And I was like, wow, if you were 30 in 1996... I mean, you're looking real good in 2019, like real good.
I checked out her Instagram. Child, like I said, I think she's a vampire. She does not age. She does not look 52. I mean, she could easily pass for like 30. I kid you not.
I think you need to get on Instagram, Vanessa. Then you can stop stalking everybody's Instagram.
I know, huh? I'm Insta-stalking.
I was like, you know. You mentioned other movies, and you might be looking this up now. One of the things that I did do was look up other kind of top-grossing films. So apparently The Craft was under quote-unquote thriller suspense and not horror. So it was actually the third, for that category of thriller and suspense, third top box office grossing film after Executive Decision with Kurt Russell and Primal Fear with Edward Norton.
Can I see Primal Fear? That sounds so... I did. Is that the one that has Richard Gere in it too?
Girl, where he was that little boy and he like completely flipped the script on everyone.
Yeah, that's the one where Richard Gere plays the lawyer though, right? Okay, that was a good movie.
That was a real good movie.
Not to get off topic, but that was a real good movie.
Girl, that introduced me to Edward Norton, who I love. And I remember being like, oh, this poor little boy. And I hope, you know, Richard Gere can get him off. Mm-hmm.
We won't spoil the twist ending.
You're right. I mean, but it happened in 1996.
I know, but girl, it's a good twist, though. It's a good twist. Because I remember, I didn't watch it when it first came out, but I watched it much later. And when the twist happened, I was sitting there like, wait, what just happened?
Same.
Oh, my goodness, did I get played? Because usually I can figure out the twist in the movies, you know. This one, I didn't figure it out. I was literally sitting there like, did I just miss something? Wait, what?
Girl, it was like, so clearly y'all can tell from our excitement about Primal Fear, The Craft really is not that good of a movie, so maybe you shouldn't waste your time with it, and y'all should be watching Primal Fear, because I did the same thing Vanessa did, where I didn't watch it when it came out, I watched it later, and it still held up, and that twist hits, and you're like, what? Like okay, I won't spoil it if you haven't watched it, but I mean, this is what put me on game with Edward Norton. And I was like, who is this? And he was like a kid at the time. But it's a really good movie. Y'all should watch it. It's good.
Yeah. Yeah, The Craft is, in my opinion, is definitely geared for young adults.
Yeah.
I think as an adult, you won't enjoy it.
I'm trying to think, though. I mean, I feel like it's very 90s. Like, I'm not even sure if we were to show this to, like if you were to show it to Jonathan, like our nephew, like Jonathan, or even, like, you know, Journey or Jordan, I'm not even sure they would be into it. Like, I feel like they'd be like, oh, okay.
You might be right. I mean, I didn't feel it was that dated. Because I kind of wonder if they could appreciate like the storyline and maybe like this appeal of Wiccan goth culture. I don't know. But you know how, like, as teenagers, you're trying to find yourself? So I kind of feel like it would appeal to teenagers in that regard.
Yeah, I mean, I think it definitely appeals if you're a teenager that, yeah, like you're on that outside fringe and you're like trying to look for a way to get in, or you're interested in that kind of stuff. Like, I could see that, making sense.
Yeah.
Okay, here's our last question for you. So one of the things that we said we're doing horror films this month. This is our first and only film on witches. I realized this, and apparently The Craft is one of the top 8 grossing films about witches since 1980. What is your favorite witch movie?
Oh, my goodness. Oh, you put me on the spot.
I sure did.
I have to think on that one.
Well, what comes to your mind first?
Well, 2 movies come to my mind. One is The Witches, starring Angelica Houston. And then the other one is, well, it's not really a witch. It's The Warlock, which is the male version of a witch. But I'm trying to think. Since I'm put on the spot, I'm going to have to stick with The Witches, starring Angelica Houston. It's not really scary, though. But, I mean, it would scare you as a kid, especially when Angelica Houston turns into the Grand High Witch. But I feel like it's an enjoyable family movie during Halloween. And also, too, I absolutely adore Angelica Houston.
No, she definitely, I'm with you on that one, yeah.
Yeah, and I love how she played the Grand High Witch.
Yes, so I'm just going to say an emphatic yes. That's definitely one of the movies that I put on rotation for the Halloween movies that we watch. I watched it with Felix, and he wasn't scared, which I was like, that's weird. Didn't understand that. But it's, that's one of the movies where I really hope they don't do a remake, because I think she does such an amazing job, but all of the cast does. And I was scared as a kid, because I promise you, I was looking for anybody with purple eyes, because I was like, nope, I know what you about, and I'm not with it. So I'm with you that definitely, you took my top witch movie, which is The Witches. So the ones that I'll say that come to mind, since you also brought up The Warlock, which is my other witch movie, this is a weird one, but I remember us watching it together. You remember The Witches of Eastwick?
I don't remember watching that movie.
With Jack Nicholson and Cher. And who else? I mean, it's like a whole, like, they're all like headliners. Like Michelle Pfeiffer's in it. I'm missing some people.
I honestly don't remember watching that movie.
Really?
I don't remember watching it, no.
So I remember watching that movie. It's not a favorite of mine because it was so weird, and I couldn't understand how anybody would be attracted to Jack Nicholson. And that's not shade, because I love Jack Nicholson, and Jack Nicholson in his day could get it, like, real talk, like. So, I mean, it wasn't shade. It was just the idea that he was supposed to be this, like, I'm so appealing. And I was like, I feel like Jack Nicholson's appeal is not, it's not like he's sexy. You know what I mean? He's not like Morris Chestnut for You, or he's not like, I don't know who my person is yet, but he's not any of those people. Like, like he's not like the dude that plays Black Panther in the Marvel movies. He's not Chris Hemsworth. He's not that kind of sexy. So I remember being like, that's not attractive. So that's one that I would say in terms of witch films. And then the other one that I do love a lot, and it's corny as hell, is Hocus Pocus.
Right? Hocus Pocus is a classic.
I love Hocus Pocus, and I watch it every Halloween. And even though Bette Midler, like her whole white feminism bullshit is like really getting to me. And I say that with love because, you know, I love Beaches and I loved, God, what was it? The Rose. And, you know, so I was a fan of Bette Midler, but I was like, say some more shit about, you know, Beyonce's fans voting for or mobilizing against Trump. Like, I'm gonna get on my soapbox. We as Black women are tired. Like, we are not the ones that put that crazy ass man in office. Bette Midler, right. If you listen to this, but you probably won't, you talk to them white females who voted for that motherfucker. That's who you talk to. Don't talk about Beyonce's fans, you know, mobilizing and shit. We're tired. Black women are tired. We've done our part. Right. We're doing our part.
Yeah, I don't even know why. I don't even know why she would say that about the Beyonce fans, because it just seems kind of out of character for any Black person to vote for Trump. I know there are some who did.
There are, yeah.
But it just seems out of character for her to be like, the Beyonce fans, you know, right? Put Trump in office. So is there a backstory to it, or?
I think what happened was that, so I hate to do this because what's going to happen, you guys, just so we all are clear, is that I don't consider myself part of the quote-unquote beehive, but I am a Beyonce fan. Vanessa,
she's part of the beehive, y'all.
She's part of the beehive. Vanessa, on the other hand, I would put her in the hater category.
No. Go ahead and finish your thought. Process.
So what happened was that, and I agree with this, a lot of Beyonce fans were upset because she was up for a Creative Emmy for her Homecoming album. And what happened was that she ended up not winning, and James Corden won for like his carpool karaoke with Paul McCartney or what, you know. And I would say too, I was like, so the first Black woman to headline at Coachella, who like puts her blood, sweat, and tears into bringing Black culture into this festival, which, let's all just be clear, tends to be mostly like white indie experimental music. Like, I thought that was dope what she did, and I felt like, yeah, it was better than what James Corden did. And she didn't get the Emmy, so her fans were upset, and they, you know, spoke out. And that's where Bette Midler was like, oh, if, like, you know, Beyonce has 133 million followers on Instagram, and if even half of them, like, mobilize, that's more than those who, like, you know, that's more than, like, it's either the women or something that voted for Trump. And that's when I think a bunch of Black women were just like, no, we're tired. We did our part. You do your part as a white woman.
Well, I'm not going to get into the whole Beyonce discussion because we ain't got time for that. I will say, I think some of her fans might overinflate what she does. That's all I'm going to say. Slander. And now we shall move on.
All right. Slander. Yes, let us move on. But yes, Hocus Pocus is my favorite witches movie. Okay, Vanessa. So we have talked about The Craft this week. We've also given y'all some good mentions of things to watch instead of The Craft, which is Primal Fear.
Yeah. Can I just say, though, I find it so funny how we got off topic so many times. Like, we're supposed to be talking about the movie. We, like, briefly covered the movie, and then we went off topic. Primal Fear, Bette Midler. I mean, I'm just like, this should tell you how we really felt about the movie.
Yeah, I would just say, y'all, don't do it unless you got time to kill.
Yeah, this is definitely a movie, like, if you're absolutely bored on a weekend and there's nothing else on TV but The Craft, then watch it.
Watch Scream instead. It's better. Primal Fear.
I'm just saying, there's like nothing else on TV, though. Exactly. I mean, you know.
Yeah, I'm with Vanessa on that. I mean, that makes me feel like we probably... Now I kind of want to review our list for the horror films, because I was like, What if they're all like they're all movies that we watched as kids that we loved a lot, but maybe we need to look at this list with an adult eye or something. I don't know.
Well, why don't we put the list out there to the listeners and let them decide if we need to take one out? So,
wait. Let's not do the entire list though. Let's just do the next one because I think we're coming up on time. I'm getting that look from the producer.
Oh, okay. Well, so next week we're supposed to be reviewing Friday the 13th, the final chapter.
And to be clear, when we're talking about Friday the 13th, we're not talking about the first movie.
I think this is like part 7.
Is it? Or is it part 4? 5?
Let me look it up.
Yeah.
You know, it's a shame. It's like so many Friday the 13th.
There's a million Friday the 13th, y'all. But I think we wanted to stay true to what we watched as kids, which was part of the goal of this podcast.
Actually, I think you might be right. Yep, you're right. It's the 4th installment.
Yes. So it is the 4th installment of Friday the 13th, which Vanessa and we have watched all of the Friday the 13th movies together up until Jason Goes to Hell.
I've seen all of them.
No, what we watched together, girl.
Oh, probably, yeah. I think that's probably the last one, Jason Goes to Hell.
Yeah.
I don't think you saw, like, Jason 10.
I saw Jason 10, but not with you. But Vanessa and I, when we were kids, we used to do on Friday the 13th, they would show a marathon of all the Friday the 13th films, and we would watch that together. So that is the next one is Friday the 13th, the final chapter, which is really chapter 4.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing I would say is that if you're listening and you are listening to us on iTunes, give us a 5-star review and subscribe. If you're not listening on iTunes, you can find us on Stitcher. We're on Google Podcasts, and we are on Spotify.
Yes. And on that note, we back, y'all.
We're back.
We back.
Girl, that reminded me of Ghostbusters. Okay, we out, girl. We out.
We out. Boom.
Mic drop.
This was a Holler FM podcast.
And I think we're done.